Aloha and welcome to Java. Thank you for joining me. It's for Thursday, February 22nd, 2024. I hope you all had a great evening. We had quite the moves in the markets yesterday after close, and I'd like to go into a bit of why, quite a bit going on today. So let's start with the MMRIs, our favorite risk indicator, still relatively stable in a high zone at 277.3. So we're watching a slight pullback with the dollar as well as the 10-year yield. So these have allowed capital to flow back into the stocks. So we've got green stock market, except for the NASDAQ is slightly down. So little pressure on oil, but the futures also green at the moment. We've basically got market rally on the back of this. Let's go a little deeper into why. So today we are expecting jobless claims prior to the market open. These will potentially be market mover as they're seen as major influence on when and whether the Federal Reserve will cut rates. So we've got earnings coming out today and then also tomorrow for prior to banks opening. In particular, we'll be watching, we've got Moderna, a couple of energy names, as well as Carvana. So be some interest there. So what happened after markets yesterday was NVIDIA's earnings. Their earnings shot through the roof, went green. So they're calling it a Taylor Swift moment for the industries. Basically, this is what happened as soon as they reported, went down a bit, found that bottom on the initials, dropped out basically a lot of the calls, and then shot up. So we've got NVIDIA in high positive territory. Can it continue? We will see. As of right now, it has caused basically a global boom in the equities markets. So, coupled with that, we also have China basically put a floor in their stock market. So, they banned any selling of their stocks either at the open or at the close. And with any major firms, they are not allowed to sell any more than they purchase during the day. So, if you can only basically buy, then it's only going to be positive for the stock market. Can't possibly go down with the way that they've got this set up. So a lot of Chinese stocks really had a green day yesterday as well. We've also got Japan shares opening higher. They are now at their all-time highs since 1989. So quite a boom they're having there. They've got a bit more of an inflation story with what they're doing with their rates and their currency. So I just want to bring this out that when you price something in a currency, in this case, the Japanese yen, and then you make the yen worth less, everything will shoot up in price, and that causes the inflation. So with this, we've got a couple of specific stories. The first one being Alphabet. So this is Google. And they basically put a halt on their Gemini artificial intelligence. They're changing the name also actually to Gemma, I believe. But Gemma, and I'm glad of that because it's very confusing. But they're talking about the issues they were having. It was inaccurate in pulling up a couple of historical figures. So they've halted it for now until they can basically look into that. So, with all of this going on, we're seeing greed return into the stock markets, China having a boom in their stock markets as well as Japan. So, with all of this, Federal Reserve minutes that came out yesterday saying that they're concerned about inflation returning, and they're talking about a spike in inflation. And this is basically kind of filling that narrative with these prices going up. So the stock market is not connected to the real economy. It's very clearly disconnected. So going into the real economy, we've got a couple of things that we've been talking about, and it's all over the news, talking about banks struggling with property debt, the commercial real estate, the loans. We've got now also World Bank warning the world is drowning in debt, bracing for turbulence in the economies. Well, this debt is what is fueling it. So we had the US administration just canceled another $1.2 billion in student debt. So basically, look for taxes to go higher because that's who's going to pay it now instead of those students. An additional $1.2 billion in taxpayer debt now. They're also paying specifically for New York. They have safety net assistance. They have $53 million they just put towards prepaid cards. So, how is this helping them bolster their economy? They've got over 17,000 illegals just given these free and open cards, $5,000 a piece to spend. So, they're going to be spending this some locally, some is being exported back to where they came from. But this is kind of bringing them up a bit, at least temporarily. So, with all of this, a wash of debt that is coming in, the credit agencies are basically changing the landscape. This is going to be an up and coming story. And they're really not talking about it right now. But if you've seen the effects, the past couple of cuts in ratings for sovereign debt and what that can do to the national debt, the bonds, it increases the interest rate you have to pay for the debt. So there are external credit rating agencies that the BRICS have decided that they will be using. So, First Russian Bank now receiving the Chinese credit rating, they're given an AA minus with outlook being stable. So, they've got their own models they're coming up with between Russia, China, the entire BRICS system, talking about how this is going to work. They're going to decouple from the typical, we've got Moody's, we've got S&P. So our three major rating agencies are now facing competition. So we've got India's central bank officials refuting the International Monetary Fund's view of their government debt. So we're seeing a clash on a back end here. It's not just about the currency wars now, but a new way to kind of battle their interest rates and make one currency more important than the other. And when you do that, this affects their cost of trade, goods, and filters down to local inflation. So, very important. It seems very quiet, but it's a very major mover. So, back to the United States, I've been talking about the insurance crisis. If you're new here, it's not just the cost of a home anymore. So, we're going to watch a crash, basically, you say a crash or a decline in the real estate market. And this is a little more specific to the residential side. However, if you can't afford insurance and you can't pay your property taxes, you don't ever own your property. And this is the underlying of property rights going away. We don't actually have property rights as it is, and you have to be able to defend them from these ongoing things. So, what has happened is we've got insurance companies. They are either shutting, completely leaving states, and people have to go to what is quote unquote insurers of last resort, usually state run insurance companies, because their costs are just too high. They can no longer, they're having insurance costs that are doubling within the year. So, along with this, we've got property tax. Now, this one says specifically for Texas. They do have high property taxes in that state. However, I see this is going to spread across multiple states. So, the price can drop in your home, but you still have to pay double and triple on your property taxes. And it's really adding to the unaffordability. So yesterday we also had a call in from Home Depot talking about the outlook that they have. And this to me is a better gauge of the real economy that's going on in the United States, because they're talking about the lack of home turnover is the basis for home improvement. They want to fix up their homes and sell them, and that's not happening. So they're saying this is a lag effect when it comes to this going on. So Home Depot facing some issues and their stock is dropping. So with all of this going on, we've got the Eurozone talking about the German factory slump. So we've got two kind of contradictory stories here as well. One is talking about the optimism in the economy going on in Western Europe. We know this, it's mainstream media. And then also German factories coming out on top. So we've got some semiconductor chips that have moved manufacturing over there that I expect will be a great boon to them in the long run. But what we're seeing short term is that the G7 basically, right here, vowing support for Ukraine with all of the war. So all of the bombs, all of the weapons they are producing goes to the bottom line via their GDP. So exporting all of these war and weapons, just like the United States is quote unquote good for their economy. I say that because it's short term only, not good for long term. So we just had a report of several United States cell carriers having major outage in the United States. We'll keep up on that. Could be a hacking attack, we'll see. Because it's currently they're talking about AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon. So if you have those services, you may have an outage. So I just wanted to talk about a couple of lava updates. Largest one is we've got a major ongoing threat to free speech. And if you've been with me for a bit, I'm still shadow banned on this platform in particular, as well as having a lot of my posts deleted. So this freedom of speech is kind of a mirage at the moment and under attack. So this in particular is Canada saying that conspiracy theorists threaten mainstream media. Well, because mainstream media, they're talking about the government basically funding and controlling it. So if the government takes control via mainstream media, you're only going to hear propaganda. So, I mean, that's a given, but it just seems kind of ridiculous. And he was talking about there's a deliberate undermining of mainstream media. I agree with that because mainstream media is filled with all kinds of interesting things that I have to be very careful about mentioning, but they also will not tell you what you need to know. So, with that, we've got this story about them cracking down on streaming and podcasts. So, I don't know how long I'll be here for, as long as possible, but this is what's going on. This is his statement. This is all just an opinion. But his statement that we're putting money towards local independent media after he had just argued that doing so would compromise news outlets as becoming mouthpieces for the government. I agree with that, but yet he's still talking about taking control of that. And it's not just there, that is pretty much spreading across the West. So, with that, I wish you all a green trading day, wonderful day in general. And until I see you again, my friends, stay free.